You got a big cow behind you, Ron.
That's a big old cow. Which one? The dog or the actual cow? Okay, we are live.
Okay, thank you all. It's a little after 2 on February 9th. We're calling the Forestation Board meeting to order. Glad to see the mayor and Ron and some of our council members joining us. We have 2 of the members that can't participate today, that being Sylvia and Connie, but we have enough for a quorum. So we'll move forward with the review of the meeting from January 12th. You should all have a copy of the minutes. It was kind of a short and sweet meeting, so please take a look if you've not already done so, and let me know if there's any questions or changes.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay. I guess Lee, you'll have to second it.
I'll second them.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Minutes are approved. Mr. Mayor, what would you like to share with us today?
Well, I think that you're all aware that the amended budget appropriated an additional $3,000 for the Forestation Board planting of new trees. So that's, I think you all knew that, but I just thought that was the biggest thing of interest to this group. You're aware that Gustavo's is seeking rezoning of their new restaurant lot, which will come up at the next council meeting. And those documents, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended it. So that'll come up for, since it's in the city of Prospect, it'll come up before city council at their next meeting. It will, whatever they do, it will take an ordinance to do it, which will require 2 meetings. Now, the second meeting would be in March, past the 60-day cutoff, so they probably have to have a special meeting for that. But that's on the council's table for action. I was contacted by their architect that wanted to know if he should come make a presentation. And I told him no, because the council is allowed to consider only the evidence that was presented to the Planning Commission and nothing else. I told him that they would have all that information, and I've looked at it, and it's pretty extensive. So it should be sufficient. I did tell him that he was welcome to look it in because it was listening, because it was a public meeting. So there's that. I don't know what else would be of interest to this group. There's no news on the front of any of the developments proposed or otherwise. Maybe too cold for them to be doing much. But they are moving dirt down at the Hunting Green. They're still doing their infrastructure work down there. I go by there a couple times a day. Had a little accident up at the salt shed. We just recently got a brand new salt shed because a tree fell on the old one, and luckily the insurance paid for almost all of the new one. And our greenscapes company went in to get some salt and apparently tore new one. So Ron was just up there about the last hour looking at it. He says, not bad, it can be patched. Things like that. Just another day in paradise.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Anything else? Any questions for the mayor? Okay.
Yeah, the city might want to buy a lottery ticket when it gets high. They've been pretty lucky here lately.
We buy lottery tickets. There's a pool here at the office.
We call that our retirement plan.
I'm gonna say, who leaves the key when you all win?
I'm planning to buy islands in the Caribbean.
Sounds like a plan. Moving on to the agenda is Andrea, and the first thing I've got on there is the emerald ash borer. And Lee had seen something that there might be some thinking to not treat going forward, and he reached out to Andrea, who reached out to her professional contacts, and maybe you could share with the group what you found out in terms of treatment still being recommended.
Okay, sure. The emerald ash borer has been kind of marching across the state, so to speak, from east to west over the last 10 or 12 years probably. And believe it or not, there's still a few counties in Kentucky that aren't affected, but even last year we have found new populations in some of the counties that were previously unaffected. So in other words, because it hasn't, they say in other states where it first started, which was like in Michigan, for instance, and states, northern Indiana and so forth, that where the emerald ash borer first was found, that their populations dropped very low because so many ash trees were lost, both in wooded native areas and also in populated areas. So once populations decrease enough, then we'll be able to stop treating. So different counties in Kentucky are at different stages of the development or the populations that they have. And so I did reach out to Dr. Jonathan Larson. He's the extension entomologist for the University of Kentucky. And his feeling was that because we're still having new infestations in counties that previously didn't have them, and they are going, like I said, east to west, that he didn't think that it would be warranted quite yet to stop treating on valuable trees that are healthy. So what we've done in the past is, I think everybody knows, is to each time before we decide to retreat a tree, the Forestation Board and myself have been looking at each tree and reevaluating whether they should be treated, whether it's warranted again. Now, the option I would throw out there is that some of the research and some of the recommendations I've been making over the last year or two have been going from treating every 2 years to every 3 years. So this would be the every 2-year cycle. This year, the larger ash trees in the city are up for discussion on whether they would be treated. And there's only, I think, a handful of them. I didn't look up the exact number, but there's 4 or 5 big ones in Hunting Creek, for instance, come to mind. There's research that's been done on these by the land grant universities, and some of the research indicates the larger trees can go even in heavily infested areas every 3 years now, because the treatment has been so effective. So I've started recommending that. And so if you wanted, you could go to a 3-year treatment cycle instead of a 2-year treatment cycle, which would mean you could postpone it till next year and probably be fine. And there's no guarantees, but I've talked to limb walkers about it, and Eric Best, he was the guy that for limb walkers that treated the trees in Prospect for quite a while, and now he's taken over as I guess you'd say as like an account manager or something. And he said they've been seeing good results with every 3-year, going to an every 3-year treatment with the same chemical, which is injected. So that could be an option if you want to consider that. I think it really depends on how these trees are doing and how they leaf out, look like they're beginning. We usually look at them in early April, or as they're beginning to bud out, and we can tell enough about them as to whether they're going to leaf out and look good. If they leaf out and they have dead branches, or they look half dead, or they're just not doing well, then of course we wouldn't recommend treating them. So that's kind of where we are with that. We have to go with each different state in the populations in each state, and that is varying right now. So that's kind of the update that I told Lee about. Does anybody have any questions about that, or? Can you hear me?
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure because I'm on a different device today and I wasn't sure. I thought maybe I muted myself or something.
No, working just,
That'd be bad.
thank you.
Just say it all again.
I wish I could play the re-record button for you.
There you go.
So that's kind of the scoop.
Okay,
Yes.
sounds good. Appreciate it. The next thing I wanted to get into, and this was something that you and I had some communication, Andrea, that the tree replacement for the island that's in Hunting Creek Drive near White
Yes.
Hill, that we were hoping to find an evergreen that would not be vulnerable to disease like the spruces that
Right.
we just lost there. And you had a couple of ideas, but said a lot of that would depend on what was available. And that information is just probably in the window of starting to become available.
Right. So yes, I had mentioned to Linda that one thing that came to mind was, when you talk about evergreens for our area, first of all, I think we want to rule out blue spruces because we all know they're not doing well, unfortunately. And then that leaves things like Norway spruces, white pines, which I think are too big for that area. You think about evergreen hollies like American hollies. You might think about evergreen magnolias possibly. But so those are different options, general options. I was thinking about a spruce that's a little more uncommon to our area, but does well here. It's called a Serbian spruce. And I could send you all some pictures of them. Serbian spruce is, it actually comes from Serbia, by the way. But it kind of has a very graceful growth habit, a dark green, glossy foliage. It has some kind of a little bit of a whitish streak in the needle. It looks very graceful. It has kind of upward arching branches. It's very neat. And so I asked Kenton Abrams of Abrams Nursery, where we've been getting the trees, just because he's a good nurseryman and he has really good contacts and he has good pricing compared to a lot of the other wholesale nurseries in town. And he thinks they're great trees. He doesn't grow them at this point. They're not really grown around here, but he said he would look at his contacts that he has. A lot of times they bring them up from the North Carolina area, and he would look into reaching out to some of his contacts and see if he could get a couple in if you're interested to look at and perhaps plant. He would get 2 or 3 in so we could pick the best one, basically, if you're interested. So I don't know any more than that right now. The nursery industry is kind of real slow at this time of year. A lot of the guys take off this time of year just before the big hit of the spring season starts. So Linda's kind of right when, and we'll have to wait. We may have to wait till early March or so to find out what's available and what the pricing might be. But I don't know how you feel about, like, the Serbian spruces aren't susceptible to the disease problem either that the blue spruce have. So that's one recommendation if you're interested. Does anybody have a specific, or Mr. Mayor, did you have a specific tree in mind when you were thinking of another evergreen?
Well, I did, but the Serbian spruce sounds like what maybe ought to be our first choice. What I was thinking of was a hemlock tree. I have one in my backyard, and I think they're just so beautiful and graceful. And that's maybe something you might want to consider for someone.
Yeah, I love hemlocks. They have, as you probably have just the perfect location in your backyard. I bet the soils are probably exactly right. It has to be well drained. They're better planted and not a real exposed site generally. We could look at a hemlock. That's something that could be a possibility. I find that they're a little harder to get to transplant well. I mean, if they're planted in exactly the right location, they seem to do very well. But so, I'm not opposed to a hemlock if you want to try one there. They just are a little, I find that they're a little more finicky. So, with the type of soils and the drainage and that kind of thing. So that's why I was thinking about the spruce, but we could go with we could look and see I was thinking maybe you'd want a little bigger tree there since of where it is. So normally we would plant, well, the last blue spruce that went in that area in that same median was 10 to 12 foot. So I was thinking maybe they go 6 to 8 foot, 10 to 12 foot and up. And you don't want to get huge because it's harder to transplant. But I was thinking you might want like a 10 to 12 foot tree there again, because it's such a high profile area. But we can look into both and see what's available if you'd like.
Can we go back to maybe consider what native evergreens would be available? Would be appropriate.
Well, you can plant white pines, but they have some issues also.
White pines get huge.
Yeah, and they get too big. Right. That's the other
I've
reason.
noticed over the last about 5 years too, we've lost a large amount of white pines.
They're not doing well. No, they're not doing well.
They're very fragile in ice storms.
Right. So that kind of, I don't know of any other ones, Herb.
Okay.
I think hemlocks would be, but the main thing with native trees or any tree is the first thing to consider is the site and whether it's going to do well in the site you're planting it in.
But don't hemlocks get enormous? I think the one he's talking about, don't they get really, really large?
Well, after 40 years, they do get a little height on them, yeah. You would too.
Well, I have. I like hemlock. I mean, the mayor made me aware of the hemlocks, and I've noticed them all around him. And they really are a neat tree.
It sounds like they could both be good options. Why don't we pursue some information on availability of both and then make a final decision?
Sure, we can do that.
Okay.
So it's going to be a few weeks to a month before, it might even be till mid-March before, or hopefully earlier than that. I'll certainly push for information sooner, but it's going to take a few weeks at least to get any information, I think, right now. But I'll make some calls.
That the city council cannot make me drink the hemlock.
There you go.
Understand. Okay. Next item on the agenda is our spring planting proposal. As you know, we were thrilled to hear about additional funding for tree planting this year, and the initial conversation the board had was to revisit the Cowley Park project. And so we took another look at the information that was initially presented. It's been reworked. It was sent out to the Forestation Board prior to this meeting for their feedback. And other than needing to finalize the choice for the island that we've just discussed, we've reworked that, and we would like to submit that to council for their discussion at the next meeting and go from there. We know it's a very high profile location. There's been a lot of discussion, but one of the key factors is it's a chance to build for the future. And some of the trees we have that are beautiful now, they don't last forever. So we're investing not only in something that could bring beauty to wonderful area, but to improve it as time goes by, but still give us plenty of access for activities as time goes on. And we hope to do more things as a community in that space, which is sort of a showcase for events here in the city. So by the end of the week, I will be sending that to all council members, and hopefully you can have that discussion as part of the forestation report at your next council meeting. So you'll probably have some questions after you have a chance to review the information again, and all of us will be available to answer any questions you have, and hopefully we feel it would be a great use. We have a plan that a lot of people have worked on. Parks and Recreation worked with us. Ron worked with us just to make sure that the tree choices and the locations would work for everybody. So that's kind of where we are, and we're kind of excited about it. So we're hoping that you will look on that kindly and give us some further consideration on the best way to use that money this year, because we really would like to pursue that this spring.
Is there a drawing proposed?
There are several drawings. There are drawings. There's information on the scale of the trees. Yeah,
I'd like to see it.
we'll get you all the drawings that are in the presentation.
Thank you.
There's
And
drawings
and the thing about it, this is not a new concept. This is a concept that we've showed the previous council. In other presentations, we made one. Linda made one in February last year, so it's so. The one thing, Linda, I think we had $3,000, and I see in it could be 3,500. Is that so? Do we have a $500 situation that we need to deal with?
Probably not, based on the initial conversation we had that the mayor was anxious to have us do something to replace the island tree and to have something in place in Cali Park for the oak that's being lost there, to at least start the planting process on those two trees. And he had offered some money out of a contingency fund. So I think what we need to finalize is current numbers, depending on the tree we get for Wythe Hill, a little bigger tree, a little bit more expensive, that we will have. I think that's a ballpark number. We can work the budget and the contingency. It's manageable, and certainly we'll have better numbers for council before, a final approval or any trees are ordered.
Now, hold on. We've been dealing with this. If we get council in a week, next Monday, to approve the concept, I hope we don't have to go back and with the final number. I hope we can be ordering trees. We're not talking about a two-step process back to the council.
Herb, what is your concern?
Well, I just want to. Well, a lot of times somebody could say, "Well, you got 3,000 and you're proposing 3,500." So,
well, if it's 3,500, well, we'll deal with it.
Okay, but back to okay. So I just hope if council has their gives a blessing, we can order the trees so we can see them in the spring.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
And a lot of the numbers were based on good information, so I don't think we're totally out of the ballpark. There shouldn't be any really big surprises going forward.
Yep.
Okay. I think that's where we are on that. The next thing I've got are the tree removals. Ron, I know the oak tree is still in Valley Park, and I'm not sure what the plan is for the spruce. It's dead at City Hall, but all the paperwork is in, so it's officially on the list to do.
Yep. The spruce at City Hall is gone. It's been gone 2 weeks now.
Okay.
The one at the oak tree at Cali, we're waiting on weather because he can't get equipment in there if it's as wet as it's been.
Understand. Okay. So, you know,
Other than that, all requests for remediation are clear.
great. Thank you. We'll just keep an eye on other projects as, you know, things come out and we see where we've got problems in the spring and the whole process starts again. So moving on, just a little bit, some of you may already know this, is we did receive word that Prospect has been recognized as a Tree City USA again. And so we're very pleased and we appreciate the support we got from council and the many trees we were able to plan for and plant this year, and certainly that contributed to, I think, our success and our recognition. So we'll be we did a little article that hopefully Ron can get into the next newsletter, so the community's aware and just kind of keep them thinking about trees and the things that we as a community do to keep Prospect green. Let's see, I think that's pretty much it, other than to say our next meeting would be March 9th, and Lee will be back in Kentucky and, you know, doing his thing again. So is there any questions or any other topics that anybody would like to bring up?
Yeah,
We'll probably have to teach Lee how to talk Kentucky again.
You're probably right. I'm sure he can handle
when
it.
Herb is done, I'd like to jump in.
Okay. Herb, anything
Several
else from
years
you?
ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I guess, Andrea, at my request, found a little beech tree. We used to, where you go into Hunting Creek in that triangle, and there used to be a huge old beech tree there. And it got sick and they took it down. And so Andrea, at my request, found us a new beech tree and we planted it there. And I just have, sort of like hemlocks, I have a special place in my heart for beech trees. And to my knowledge, that's the only beech tree in Prospect, for all I know. So
And
I
it's
think
beautiful.
we ought to find another place to plant another beech tree one of these days. They do get big, but it takes a while before they do. It takes a long time.
That's why we need to plant more trees now.
They're beautiful trees.
It is beautiful, no doubt about it. So if there's nothing else, Herb.
Linda, I have a question.
Yes, Greg?
It's great that we have a forestation board, and it's wonderful that we are a tree city, and that makes us a healthier community. And I know that the forestation board has a lot of initiatives, which is great from a city perspective, but it also has a free tree program that our citizens can partake of, and so it helps them as well. Plus, we have educational, we have flyers and brochures for our citizens as well. So all that's great. And all that is really, I think, key to making Prospect a great place to live. It's a healthier place to live, thanks to all of your all's efforts. So with that in mind, I was wondering, and I have seen this here and there, but my idea or my question actually for the Forestation Board is, has it considered more of a formalized process of tree identification, especially the more mature trees? Maybe pick a park or pick an area that you think it would be appropriate, and then tag those trees such that the citizens could go to that given area and then see what a mature tree looks like that is a certain type of tree that they might be thinking of planting. Because it's real easy, and I put myself in this category, to go out and buy a tree and it looks wonderful, but it's hard to imagine what that tree is going to look like at its maturity. And so seeing the size and the shape of it and the fall color and all of that sort of thing. So I'll summarize by saying, could the Forestation Board consider some sort of initiative to identify through some sort of a tag system the larger trees in our area so that citizens could see what they look like?
Well, actually, we have discussed that, and if you take a look, Little Hunting Creek Park does have a number of tag trees, and as part of a continuing education program, we looked at doing more tagging throughout the community. We've had some conversation with Parks and Recreation, whether it might be appropriate to tag some trees throughout there, the key pathways in the parks that could certainly fall into that. And that is, I think, a project that we have on our list to continue to consider. The tags aren't terribly expensive, and it's certainly something we can put into our proposal. It's not in the current fiscal year, but certainly we could look at where we would go and how many tags we would need for the next year's budget. I think that's a great idea, and we'd like to see more of it. You also brought up another point that should have been on the agenda, and that was, we didn't have our Arbor Fest back in October as we did because of the pandemic, and we've been kind of keeping an eye on things ever since, with the hopes that conditions would present themselves that it made it possible for us to do some sort of public event, and maybe even to do something in the spring closer to when the actual Arbor Day is, which is, I think, the end of April. And at this point, I think it's too soon to say that we can do something. We don't know how things are going to continue and what the city's policy will be by then. So it's still on hold. I'm sure it will be a topic to look at again come next month.
Good. I comment on that, Linda. So if you do decide to do that, then that's great. And hopefully the COVID situation will be calmed down where people could come, and maybe there's a way that they could come and keep the distance and still do what you want to do. And that would be great. If you decide not to do it, perhaps the funds that you would have spent to conduct the Arbor Fest could be plowed into some of the other initiatives that you want to do this year.
Absolutely, because
just a thought.
public education is on our list of things to do as part of learning more about trees for Prospect.
Let's back to the tagging. Why don't you? I think it's a great idea, Greg. But why don't we think in terms of definitely the 7 new trees if they get approved in Cali Park, and maybe some of the existing trees in Cali Park.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Herb. I agree. The Cali Park would be a nice high-profile area to have identification in. We could do existing and new trees, like you said.
Yeah. Good idea.
I have a question.
Yes, Don.
I think with the $3,000 with the last budget amendment, you had a total of something like $5,500 to spend for new trees this fiscal year. Will y'all spend all of that this fiscal year for new trees?
Well, we spent a good chunk of that with the trees that were planted in November. And that basically we thought we had tapped out everything at that time. And then as more money has become available with the revised budget, that will bump us up to that higher number in total spending. So yes, it probably will be used. Okay. Anything else, anybody?
Linda, I was just going to let you and Lee and Andrea and everybody else on the Forestation Board, when I started volunteering at Prospect was in 2019. And this Cali Park proposal existed then. But I just want to say I commend you all for your perseverance, for your patience, for your kindness you're showing, etc. But I hope good, positive things for you come the next council meeting, and I will advocate for you because I have seen it from its infancy, as you all have. But it is marinated, and so I just wanted to say thank you all, and your all's patience is admirable,
no doubt.
And we do appreciate you all for being such strong advocates and so passionate that it doesn't annoy you, or at least not on the outside. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. We
I'd
appreciate
like to
it.
address John Dixon's question, or I'll call it a question, about where you all are in the budget. Looking at what I've got here, originally you had, I believe, $2,500.
Yes.
And you had actually spent 1,900 of that 25, and then 3,000 got added to that. So where you stand right now,
3,500.
you have $3,600 left to spend between now and June 30th.
Very good. Thank you.
my knowledge, you all had no money last year, so make some good ground to get 2 years worth of plantings in.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
that's as of January 31st.
Okay, very good.
That's right, Sarah.
I urge you to
Do that.
spend it.
We can do that for sure.
Okay, anything else from
Can I
anyone?
ask one real super quick question about Hunting Creek Drive, the little reef shaped thing? I only know it from doing Light Up Hunting Creek. I know it gets beat up because I think those guys go in there, you know, and hang the lights up. Is that something that the Forestation Board kind of keeps eyes on, or is that more greenscapes?
That's more greenscapes.
That would be landscaping.
Gotcha. Okay, no problem. Thanks.
Okay, questions are good. We all learned something. No problem. I guess we need a motion to adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
I make a
Thank
motion
you,
to
Linda.
adjourn. Yep.
I'll second it, and thanks to everybody.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you all. See you next month.
Be good to
All right,
see you,
thank you.
Lee.
Good to see y'all.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Way to go,
Bye.
Linda. Good meeting.